if I could just extend my thanks to Jackie and Celia for the invite and for organising such a wonderful conference, and to Alison too for curating such a beautiful, brilliant, exciting and quite moving exhibition. I found it quite remarkable, so thank you. I'm going to talk a bit about David Bowie. I'm a huge fan of David Bowie, as some of you will know, but it's not really a fan-type response. In fact, it's old-school, close textual analysis, something that a number of us are trying to bring back into the study of stardom and celebrity. Went by the wayside for all sorts of reasons. But I'll try to do something with the close textual analysis, like the best close textual analysis does. I'll bring it back into the open to talk about culture and society, and about the vexing age of liquid modernity and the culture of loneliness. So I'll try to wrap that in, all in 45 minutes. So we've got some brilliant clips. It's all about the clips. Seeing David Bowie on screen, so if I'm rubbish, the clips just won't be. Right. In this talk, I'll explore 3 film and television fiction cameo roles that the wonderful David Bowie has performed in. I'll suggest that he brings the complexity of his shifting star image to each cameo performance, drawing on competing and sometimes conjoining artistic traditions as he does so. I'll make use of the parameters of posing and mimicry, self-reflexivity and cultish subversion, and the shifting ground of modernism and postmodernism to see how Bowie's cameo performances are not singular or consistent, but rather refer to the specificities of the text in question, the other author and actors involved, and to the multifaceted nature of his star self. And Bowie embodies a cameo role, this series of intersecting star and performance registers in play that suggest he's always in cameo. The 3 texts I've chosen to analyse are the brilliant Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, Zoolander, come on, and Extras. These texts occur across film and television, artistic and commercial streams, and take place over a 20-year performance period. It allows us to see how Bowie embodies and breaks down the very constituents of the cameo role. I'll be predominantly using those texts where David Bowie appears as David Bowie, the exception being Twin Peaks, where he takes on the disappearing role of FBI agent Philip Jeffries. These texts also allow me to address the very plateaus of Bowie's star image, since they each draw upon different and competing moments from his career. The questions that frame my reading of these cameo performances are: which David Bowie has been brought into view, and how is the text using his star image? I'll take each text in chronological order, both to narrate the cameo in relation to the perceived notion of the artist's career progression, but also to build up sedimentary layers of analysis. One cameo builds upon the previous one and yet calls it forth in the same way Bowie's star images linger on. To repeat then, I will suggest that the shape-shifting David Bowie ultimately complements and in part resides in the floating landscapes of his always in play cameo performances. Having navigated this textual and contextual analysis of David Bowie and cameo, I'll briefly extend the reading to suggest that the liquid nature of his star self readily connects to something powerful about how contemporary identity is formed and experienced. That in effect, affect, we're all asked to exist in a cameo state of being in the world. This is more than the putting on of masks. Celebrity cameo life speaks to the conditions of liquid modernity and the loneliness it can foster. Let's walk with fire. It's so hard to watch that scene now, he has gone. David Bowie's cameo in Twin Peaks Fire Walks With Me occurs near the start of the film. The scene begins with a establishing shot, which we don't see, of the cracked Liberty Bell, before we cut to an interior shot where we watch Agent Dale Cooper enter the FBI office where he works and say to Agent Cole, played by David Lynch, it is 10:10 a.m. on Friday the 16th. I was worried about today because of the dream I told you about. The importance of time and temporality and the distinction between real and dream are immediately being signified, a trope of the Twin Peaks series in which the film is a prequel, and one that is shortly be connected to David Bowie's disappearance in the film. The cracked Liberty Bell is now more a mere museum piece, and the watch that Cole looks at as Cooper speaks to him seems an absurdist temporal gesture, perhaps borrowed from the figure of the Mad Hatter, as if time is being constantly checked and monitored. As the above exchange unfolds, there is a pregnant pause between the two men, as if they are both frozen in time. The abrupt cut, which follows their conversation to a long corridor which Cooper then appears in, is momentarily discontinuous. Cooper then stands and stares into a mounted surveillance camera stationed at the near end of the long corridor before entering a nondescript control room where a bank of monitors can be seen. A series of brief shots then show Cooper looking into the eye of the surveillance camera and at the monitors that display a live feed of the corridor. Cooper is observer and observed, seemingly puzzled or put out by the fact that he cannot see himself being watched or surveyed. He seems surprised that he cannot exist on the screen and in the control room corridor at the same time. Time is rendered out of joint, and the spaces he occupies are a non-place, inhabited but not lived in. Cooper is very much experiencing what it's like to experience time and space in the age of postmodernity. It is at this schismatic moment in the scene that David Bowie disappears. A lift door opens and the camera dwells on the space where someone who should exit but doesn't. We then cut back to Cooper entering the long corridor to again look into the eye of the surveillance camera before again cutting back to the lift where David Bowie exits, dressed in a beautiful powder blue suit and loose-fitting flowery shirt. He, David Bowie, proceeds to walk down the long corridor towards Cooper. In one sense, this is a classically coded star cameo entrance, the delay device to build suspense before the blissful surprise. However, Bowie's entrance is incongruous. He doesn't fit in with his dour surroundings, and this otherness fosters estrangement and detachment. In another sense, then, this is a Lynchian film setting up a modernist entrance for what is here being signified as a modernist version of David Bowie. Cooper then proceeds to enter the control room to impossibly see himself in the live feed as David Bowie walks past him. The temporal, technological and spatial dislocation of these cuts suggests both present time, time past, and the presence of time and of time passing, capturing the very condition of film or cinema's relation to modernism and to social life where individuals might experience and re-experience the temporal dislocations of modernity. Bowie's appearance also further disrupts narrative continuity. Is this a flash forward, a fragment or figment from Agent Cooper's dreaming, or a ghost walking in plain sight? Nonetheless, one could also read this hauntology as postmodernity's present yearning for modernism's past, and for a simultaneous repositioning of Bowie before he became a postmodern star. His powder blue suit, loud shirt and blonde hair, ironic signifiers perhaps from of his Let's Dance era. Of course, the sense that David Bowie is there, not there, both an embodied being and an apparition, is not only part of the shifting grounds of the modernist, postmodernist aesthetic in the film, but the cornerstone of his idolised rock star image. Bowie is always both out of this world and a part of it. At this point, or rupture in the film, David Bowie is David Bowie in cameo, an unyet named character bringing his own fractured and polysemic identity to the scene. Cooper can't quite believe that David Bowie has just walked into the FBI building, and the shock that it expresses compounds or compresses the estrangement techniques that the film has so far been built upon. There is a high degree of, to quote Benjamin, profane illumination as the diegetic world of the film begins to disintegrate and disorientate the viewing position offered. Ernest Mathias suggests that, like star persona, cameos therefore add pleasurably intertextual and reflexive dimensions to a movie. A cameo stands out as a punctuated moment because of the extra-textual connotations it produces, but also because of its role within the narrative. It is often an odd moment hanging in time, pausing the progress of the story and inviting the viewer to ponder some tangential implications of the story's consequences. There are obviously added complications here, however, because Bowie's star image is already a punctuated one, constantly in reinvention and renegotiation, so his presence is doubly disruptive to the film narrative. This reflexive division enables Twin Peaks' Fire Walk With Me to operate from a modernist agenda, encapsulating a brooding sense of a distancing effect. While Bowie's cameo appearance is shocking and alienating, he in the film is also thick with what I would like to playfully call a present and absent illumination. Bowie's star image already effortlessly and endlessly walks in a postmodern cameo limbo. The scene continues with David Bowie entering the room that Agent Corden Cole is in, but he's now given a character's name, the long-lost Philip Jeffries, a top FBI agent who's been missing for 2 years. The thematic concerns of the scene shift. It is now as much to do with surrealist dream and shattered memory as it is with temporality and spatial non-relations. The atonal fractured sound design, the subversion of the room's spatial axis through editing mismatches, and the intermittent blue tinting or pixelating of the screen creates a mise-en-scène of unease. As Jeffries enters the room, obviously traumatized, he stutters in a high-pitched sudden drawl that is at the same time tinged with Bowie's own recognizable tones. Well now, I'm not going to talk about Judy. In fact, we're not going to talk about Judy. We're going to keep her out of this. Who do you think this is? There, pointing at Cooper, who has followed him into the office. Bowie's highly affected, slipping accent for the character, the absurdist naming of Judy, and his exaggerated performance manner, delivered as a sharp contrast to the other actors, seems to be self-conscious, drawing attention to the artificiality of acting itself. Here the film foregrounds the very act of cameo acting, which in turn demands a degree of subcultural capital, on behalf of the viewer asked to recognise the illusions and elisions on show. The sense that the scene is directly addressing the knowing viewer is compounded by the ongoing role that David Lynch plays. This is an authorial performance, actively directing the scenes in question. Twin Peaks Fire Walks With Me then doesn't just blur dream and real within its own textual operations, but in and through David Bowie's cameo role. Of course, the artifice in plain sight isn't simply acting, but stardom itself and the star images out of which Bowie has built his career. When Jeffrey shouts, "We live inside a dream," and then we bear witness to his fragmented, tortured memories, or are they dreams? The man from another place, Killer Bob, Mrs. Chalfant, and a grandson are situated in a montage sequence that fans of Twin Peaks will immediately recognise and seek to make coherent meaning out of. Pivotal this dream sequence is the mask. The grandson is wearing one and lifts it to reveal the face of a monkey. Not only is this a Lynchian trope, a belief in a multifarious reality and deep truths concealed by facades, but it speaks to Bowie's own series of masks and facades that he has taken on during his career to date. When we witness Jeffrey Bowie suffering an agonising scream in or through or within the montage sequence, we are perhaps seeing the interiorised scream that stardom's artificiality produces, and that may lie within their fractured psyche. The scene concludes by having Jeffries vanish amidst more blue static and a shot of power lines across a blue sky. The question emerges within the film, was he really there? Which is shortly confirmed by Cooper replaying the surveillance footage in the control room to prove that he was. Or was he? And who is he anyway? The enigma of David Bowie or the disappearing Agent Jeffries, present and absent, star and cameo, dream and reality, modern and postmodern, disintegrate in Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. The idea of disappearance is actually pivotal to David Bowie's career at the time. He had sought to leave behind the sugary, commercially driven star image he had utilised during the 1980s to be part of or subsumed by the grungy band Tin Machine, who were in rehearsal when the film was being shot. His presence, non-presence in the film is already imbued in and through the camera performance he gives. In the dialogue from the scene quoted above, one can read the strange, tense shift from, "Who do you think this is there?" as David Bowie and Lynch drawing attention to their performance. They're breaking the fourth wall, playing to the gallery as they disappear in and out of view. Let's strike a pose. Come on. Oh, we can all go home now. So got some Zoolander fans in the room? Thank God. I thought, that's where soul lies. Too sad. Zoolander is full. Do you all know Bo's a massive comedian fan? So I'll speak more of that, but he's a passionate love subversive comedy, so there's a reason he's in that film other than commodity intertextual relays. Zoolander is full of ironic, knowing cameo performance. Its satire of the fashion industry also extends to the starry roles that celebrities are often asked to take to add commercial weight to a film and to sanctify the importance of their fame at the time of the film's release. In Zoolander, you can feel free to boo at the first two named. In Zoolander, we see cameos from such diverse figures as Donald and Melania Trump, Victoria Beckham, Tommy Hilfiger, Lenny Kravitz, the gorgeous Lenny Kravitz, Gwen Stefani, Heidi Klum, Paris Hilton, Lil' Kim, Gary Shandling, Stephen Dorff, Sandra Bernhard, Claudia Schiffer, Lucas Haas, Karl Lagerfeld, Billy Zane, and Donatella Versace. These cameos are taken from across the fashion, sports, music, film and television entertainment landscapes and work in at least three ways. First, as satire and irony, as confirmation of the star celebrity's place in popular culture at the time. Second, to add commercial value or audience appeal to the film. And thirdly, to draw attention to the very nature of the cameo role. Zoolander thus vexingly works in opposition to, and yet in support of the cameo performances, the star industries and the set of intertextual commodity relays it sets in train. With specific regard to David Bowie, who marshals and adjudicates the walk-off battle between the two supreme fashion models, Eric Zoolander, Ben Stiller, and Hansel MacDonald, Owen Wilson, the cameo both ironises David Bowie's star image and eroticises the 1980s Bowie it references. Ultimately, the cameo draws on posing in the art of the poseur embodied in Bowie's various star images. The fashion walk-off challenge to determine the best runway model takes place in an industrial warehouse. And like many of the other backdrop or come-and-go cameo performances in the film, David Bowie introduces himself, volunteering his service to declare the winner once the battle is finished. Dressed in a black suit, white shirt done up, and wearing dark shades, which he immediately pulls away from his eyes, he emerges as a super icon and a fully formed poseur. The chorus line and notes of the 1983 track Let's Dance herald his arrival on screen, as does the title David Bowie, written in lettering taken from the same era from the Let's Dance album. There is a complex series of significations in play here. As Bowie removes his shades, he's again referring to the notion of mask and authenticity, and his clothes take us back or allude to the FBI garb worn by Cooper and Gordon in Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. The use of Let's Dance signature places Bowie at the peak of his commercial success, particularly in America, and so there is a nostalgic looking backward to an earlier time, both textually and extra-textually, for audience members who recall the record's release. Bowie's cameo in Zoolander connects him to contemporary fashion culture. In 2004, he and Imam will endorse Tommy Hilfiger, who also appears in the film. And of course, Bowie's various star image are not only fashion conscious, but are connected to the work of often radical fashion designers. However, it is the way that Bowie is employed as a poseur in the scene that I think particularly embodies this cameo performance. According to Judith A. Pereno, posing insists on self-awareness, image and service, and keeps in place the temporal and material positions of original and copy, and functions with an interaction among creator, spectator, and the object of the gaze. This is an interaction that is already saturated with implications of power and desire. Importantly, to strike a pose is to stop the action of the body, to allow the viewer to become absorbed in visual pleasure and desire, and also to allow the poseur the pleasure of inhabiting the object position. It's beautiful. In one sense, Zoolander seems to work against the grain of this definition, however. The posing that Zoolander and Hansel engage in is meant to turn into comedic simulacra, while Bowie's mostly nonchalant disinterest, as he sits on his throne, is empowered but constantly undercut by the parodic excess of the dance-off. And yet, Bowie's own star signification is in part built upon striking poses, being a poseur, from one embodied image to another, whether it be Major Tom or the Thin White Duke. As he sits on the throne, he is powerful and desirable, and his relative stillness and composure enable him to be the object of the gaze. He in fact resembles or calls forth the iconography of the cracked actor from Aladdin Sane. David Bowie as poser serves two functions. The first is to embody, validate, and transubstantiate the pose of the queer. Something he explicitly does, for example, in the video to Boys Keep Swinging from 1979. Bowie's posing as a form of subcultural resistance is being predicated upon gender and sexual subversion, opening up his pose to a non-binary queer gaze. Zoolander, of course, is decidedly and deliciously a camp text. And Bowie's kingdom is one of queenly excess. The walk-off is all about excessive display, tongue-in-cheek allusions, and feminine undercutting of the heterosexually masculine fashion models. The second function of the pose in Zoolander is to draw attention to its artificiality. Its self-conscious qualities are a mirror onto the performances of the star self. As Perena further suggests, posing calls attention to the temporal and material relationship between original and copy, and to the apprehension of surface in contrast to the perception of death. The poser's superficiality represents an intense focus on immediate conditions, but is conditioned by key figures of the past. Bowie is both original and copy here, an authentic, iconic choice for this part, and a facsimile of his 1980s alter ego. Bowie's cameo performance is of the moment, but it also draws upon his previous star images and his central role in posing, being a poser. He is again perfect for this cameo role, not simply because of the matching fit between the role and his star image, but because he is, at a meta level, a quite brilliant series of cameo poses. If one was to argue, as I've done, that Bowie's cameo in Twin Peaks' Fire Walk With Me is both modernist and postmodernist, as I would suggest is the film, then his performance in Zoolander is deliciously postmodern, as again is the film. Rather than seeing this as a shift in star signification set in a new hyper-real cultural landscape, however, the Bowie cameo always occupy these simultaneous interstitial spaces. His malleability, his series of masks enable him to exist or to pose in many cultural and artistic rooms. David Bowie can even be an extra. David Bowie's cameo performance in this highly self-reflexive situation comedy Extras also centrally draws upon the mask. The series built around weekly cameo appearances by special guest stars, charts Andy Millman's, Ricky Gervais's desire to be a regarded actor and celebrity, but his own situation comedy, When the Whistle Blows, has been rewritten by BBC producers to be a lowbrow ratings winner. Seeking refuge in a celebrity pub and sitting in the VIP area, Andy strikes up a forlorn conversation with David Bowie, who then immediately pens a song about Millman's predicament. Turning to a piano he's sitting next to, Bernie begins to write and sing, "Little fat man, chubby little loser." Starting with the line, "Little fat man who sold his dream." The degree of self-reflexivity here is again acute. One can see Millman representing the Bowie who felt he sold out and lost his way in the 1980s. The challenge of fame and what it constitutes has been a recurring feature of David Bowie's own oeuvre. So this is again a conscious double dialogue in play. The scene song is also played with a knowing authenticity in mind. We are supposedly seeing David Bowie as he really is, behind his star mask, a cruel singer-songwriter who is above ordinary people fans. But the scene is also obviously heavily parodic and draws upon the extra-textual information we have about Bowie's love of subversive comedy. This is David Bowie pretending to be David Bowie for comedic effect. Bowie draws upon the presumed skills of improvisation as he pens the song, and on the sing-along British pub tradition, as the other patrons in the bar are encouraged to join in with the chorus line, "He's banal and facile, he's a fat waste of space. See his pug-nosed face." Millman wilts as the song builds, as David Bowie proves his star worth, and as he fully embodies the face-shifting cameo he's been asked to take on. There is also a degree of modernism to this cameo performance. Theatrical and aleatory codes are combined, and there are multiple audiences, Millman, the pub crowd, the viewers at home, in self-conscious and interactive relay. In Extras then, particularly in relation to Bowie, instead of treating performance as an outgrowth of an essential self, it implies that the self is an outgrowth of performance. Performance, in turn, is understood in its broadest, most social sense as the thing we do when we interact with the world, a a concept embracing not only theatre, but public celebrity and everyday life. In a mock promo interview with David Bowie about his appearance in Extras, he lampoons his own artistic background and his own trajectory performance registers, claiming his, quote, background is in serious acting before I started doing the writing and singing thing, and that it was fun giving Rick pointers, maybe new ways in approaching comedy that he may not have thought of about before. He ends the interview by sharing terrible jokes he had passed on to Gervais for use in future episodes of Extras, such as, if you keep looking like that, your face will stay like it. Of course, Bowie is pretending to be Ricky Gervais here, or the Gervais we see in the mockumentary series The Office, who can't reflect on his own failings or shortcomings. Get this, Bowie is pretending to be Gervais, playing David Bowie as a cameo, a postmodern series of mirrors and reflections, if ever there was one. Let me just play it, it's only a couple of minutes. Extras was David Bowie's last television performance before his death in 2016. But the song he penned for the episode became the opening notes and melody for the melancholic memorial single, Where Are We Now?, released in 2013. Of course, the song from this episode, is also reminiscent of the anachronistic theatrical musical tracks that actually made up his first album, released by Duran in 1967. Where Are We Now is a love song to the past, drawing on images and references to Bowie's own creative period in Berlin. He conjures up his own memorial framework composed of lyrics that recall his time there in the late 70s, such as sitting in the Duschlange on Nuremberger Straße, while the video to the song includes shots of the places where he lived or travelled through, such as Potsdamer Platz, and objects, curiosities and mementos, such as mannequins, a snowflake, a crystal, empty glass bottles and a giant ear, suggesting Bowie's own memorabilia. Both Little Fat Man and Where We Are Now allow David and us to experience the past in the present, one of the principles of technological modernism. He appears as a cameo in his own past, both here, there, or absent present, a condition that calls back to his role as Agent Jeffries in Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. Who do you think this is there? This is David Bowie over there, always in minor key, a sign that is never fixed, a solid that is always liquid, a set of floating cameo images constantly taking on or over David Bowie. This is modernism and postmodernism in interplay, entwined and unravelling, like a Lynchian plot, like a Zoolander pose, like a Gervais pale imitation. And what of David Jones? The man behind a sea of masks. Where might we glimpse him? Through what keyhole might he appear, if not endlessly in cameo? The three David Bowie cameos that I've analysed in this talk demonstrate the way that his star image lends itself to pretense and to the modernity and postmodernity of film, star and celebrity culture. Each cameo stands in its own right, but when taken together shines a critical light on how and why Bowie registers as a certain type of fluid star figure. David Bowie in cameo does something else I've been gesturing towards in this talk so far. It reveals the way contemporary identity itself seems to be in flux, fluid, in a state of crisis. One facet is the scourge of contemporary loneliness and its relationship to celebrity culture. Shy, culturally disconnected people who see themselves as lonely find that they struggle to achieve or maintain positive social interactions, or so the discourse goes. Their loneliness presses on them to find company and companionship in and through celebrity culture. Celebrities are recuperating figures that the isolated individual can invest in, talk to, fantasize over, in exchanges where they are no longer shy, alienated, and through which they feel wanted and connected. One can, and I have, used the metaphor of the loneliness room to understand this phenomena. The liquid modern condition produces an exasperating sense of the world as lonely, disenchanted, with the absence of close community ties as the relentless tides of commodity renewal and transformation are forced upon everyday life. Celebrity culture provides a spectacle to constantly re-enchant the world, to suggest connectedness and grant access to the myth of the media centre, while celebrities provide idealised versions of the individuated self to connect and bond with. Fans leave their world loneliness rooms to access endless shared rooms that they can move through, chat in and reside in. These open rooms grant them a degree of self-empowerment, of a fantastical sense of fixedness in the world. In these celebrity social spaces, people adopt different types of cameo. Through mimicry, imitation and impersonation, they borrow the star's identity to secure their sense of self. When one thinks of Bowie fandom, one can see how his and his fans together walk in endless cameo. Since David's death in January 2016, he has appeared on screen in different and particularly moving ways as a type of fan wish fulfillment and cultural haunting. For example, in the Doctor Who episode Smile from this year, the Doctor faces an army of robots who are programmed to incinerate people if they detect that they are not happy. Retreating while smiling, the Doctor calls out, "I'm happy, I hope you're happy too," linking the scene to the lyrics of the song Ashes to Ashes. Peter Capaldi's Doctor was also initially modelled on the Bowie star image, the Thin White Duke, and so Bowie is constantly rematerialised in the body of this alien time traveller, who has the ability to resurrect or rejuvenate. Even in his death then, Bowie lives on in screen culture. And in living on so strongly, if in part as apparition, he begins to point to the material thinness of how our cultural world is held together. The most powerful example of David Bowie haunting a text comes with the latest series of Twin Peaks. Numerous interviews with key players involved with the series suggest that if it wasn't for his illness at the time of production, he would have again taken on the role of Agent Jeffries. The reporting of such facts stems from a longing to see him return, a nostalgia for once what was brilliantly here, and an elusive way to presence him into the series. This hauntology has been compounded by readings of the series by committed Twin Peaks and Bowie fans, with mined clues to suggest that Bowie Lazarus Light might return. Right. Return remain he has. The light of his existence flickering through his fans' longing to see him living on, even if it is only on screen. David Lynch finally included Bowie's character Agent Jeffries in a dream sequence in episode 14, using footage of him shot for Twin Peaks from 1992. The desire to see Bowie appear in Twin Peaks is threefold. It is about the strangeness of a dead David Bowie giving animated life to the estrangement of the show, and it is wanting to see an iconic ghostly narrative foreshadow come to full apparition, and it is a loving, painful, wishing to see and hear the black star rise again, because our lives, or those of us who care about him, are painfully bare without him. Thank you.